So good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kim Bennett. I'm the director of Visiting Angels. We are a non-medical home care company on the South Shore. We cover from Milton all the way down to the canal. We have been in business for 18 years, which when we first started, we were actually the first private duty home care company on the South Shore. And this was actually when home care companies were also licensed. So if people have been reading the article from the Globe, we can talk a lot about that. But we are owned and operated by clinical professionals. So we actually hold licenses. I'm a social worker, Nate Murray is a social worker, and Dr. Shippers is a psychologist. They have owned the company from the beginning. And one of the things that I absolutely love about the job, I've been there for 16 years. One of the things that I love about the job is I get to see people that are going through major changes in their life, usually not always in the best situations, but we get to help them. We get to go in and help the families and help the individual and help them achieve their goals. And what has sort of come out of all of that experience, I guess, because prior to that I was a rehab social worker, so I worked at South Shore Hospital in hospital settings, I actually worked at Harbor House. But what has come out of that is really just loving to work with people and talking to people about their experiences, trying to help people through it. I think sometimes, as time has gone on, when we first started, it was helping people get to sort of like food shopping or do meals, or it was kind of this really light, sort of help, to we actually have people at home on hospice with Hoyer lifts and feeding tubes. Because people are actually choosing to take more control over their health care, and they're actually making more decisions to sort of stay at home. And plus, people are living longer, which is why I also like this talk, because for all of you, you're actually sort of beginning to set the pace for the rest of us of what if it's like to have an active retirement, because people didn't do that. You retired at 65, and sometimes your life expectancy was 70. Now we're living longer, so you have this whole other phase of life that you're trying to decide what to do and who to become, and you didn't really have good models, because people didn't have 25 years after they retired. So you're sort of trailblazers. So I think it's always great when people come out and we can talk about this. So first I'm going to kind of pool everybody because it helps me to know who I'm talking to. How many people are fully retired? When I say fully. Okay. All right. How many people are retired but working? Picked up a second career or a second job? Yeah. How many people are thinking about the next steps? Yeah, great. So there's a really wonderful mix, and you can actually teach each other a whole lot, and but it kind of helps me to know who I'm talking to. So one of the first things that you need to do, and if you've done this and you're also, I want you to talk to me and I'm going to ask you questions, but one of the first things that you need to do when you're either retiring or thinking about it is define it. Define your retirement. It isn't necessarily about, and I'm not going to talk about the financial part. I'm not going to do that part. I'm talking about defining it for you, for who you are. What do you want to do? Has anybody done that in the process? Yeah. It's not something that we really think about. We think about the financial part, but we actually don't think about what that's going to mean to us. So by that I mean, write out ideas. Write down what you want yourself to look like in that next time period. Write your goals. When you're working, how many times would you start your day off with your to-do list? Anybody do that? You've got your list, the things you have to do, the things that you have to accomplish. When you retire, the majority of the time, all that goes away, and so does that structure that actually kept you motivated. So think about writing out your ideas. How do you see yourself? How do you see what your goals are, what you want to achieve? Do you want to just sit at home? My mother, when she retired, she was like, I'm taking a year. I'm going to take a year, I'm going to frame it at a certain amount of time, and I'm just going to see what it's like to actually stay home. Because I don't want to get up and go anywhere. I'm tired. I'm tired of managing people. I'm tired of having that structure, but I'm going to give it a year. And then after that, she wrote another set of goals of what she wanted to do, which was to get involved in different groups. So think about that for yourself. So those of you who are retired now, what do your days look like? Yeah, if you've been a long-range planner, all of a sudden, that kind of short range is difficult. But sometimes it's also great to say, look, I'm going to take, and when we talk about this right now, the gentleman in my life is closer to retirement than I am, so we're also trying to figure out, how do you plan for the future, but get started right now. And you can still do something that's really important for 6 months because you don't have to think a year out. So it is, be open to those new ideas. Who has a bucket list? Oh, come on. Not a single person has a bucket list, even in your head. Yeah, you have a bucket list. That's excellent. So where do you keep your bucket list? In your head. Excellent. Have you done things on it?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, right. Well, the thing is that is so wonderful to do because not only that, when I was doing this presentation once in Marshfield, one of the gentlemen that was there was great, and it was one of those eye-opening things. He said, when I was working, I had a to-do list. And he goes, I need to convert my bucket list to a to-do list. It's a different way of thinking. So if there are things that you want to do, because we all know life gets really, really busy and stuff happens, in a heartbeat, no matter what age you are. But if there are things that you want to do, there becomes that thing of not putting it off. I have a friend who took her bucket list and she puts it on her bedside table. And some of that is, I want to read Jane Eyre. It doesn't have to be something that's huge or dangerous. You can actually find some things that are really, really good that you've never had the chance to do. So I encourage you to do that. Also, how is the role of work? For those of you who worked a lot and then aren't working anymore, what's that like for you? So the role of work is important in one way or another. Structure. And work. We are people who like to feel valued. And that's why when you are work, and this is very true for the men that are in the room, and I think it's more important to now. They used to say it was mostly men, but women, how many of you worked? We all work now, so we all have that job sense sometimes, whether it's part-time, full-time, when the kids were working or whatever, that it means something to us.
Socialization.
So it's socialization and it's part of our identity. So the role of work and how important that is to you doesn't go away. So that's where volunteering and helping out, finding that other niche is a really good thing to do. You may not want to do the job or even think remotely about doing the job that you spent most of your career in, but find something else. Health. So health is really important. There are many times that you've heard people retire and then they have a heart attack and, then, they didn't have a chance to have that healthy retirement. Taking care of yourself as you get older is really important. What is more important, managing chronic conditions or exercise?
Yes.
Both. Both.
They're both. But if you have chronic health issues, it doesn't matter how much you exercise if you're not taking care of them. So if you are not taking your blood pressure medication, which I took a couple of minutes ago before I got here, because I forgot. If you're not managing your blood pressure, if you're not managing your diabetes, if you are not managing all of that, you aren't going to be able to get around as well and to exercise. So managing the health issues that are going to come, that's the thing. The older we get, I was beyond irritated when I turned 50 and went on to blood pressure medication. But as my mother said, I was the exact same age. So it's just part of taking care of yourself. But it doesn't matter how much I exercise, and I'm an exercise fanatic, that if I didn't take care of that, my chances of having a stroke or vascular dementia as I got older really would be impacted. So taking care of that. Realizing, too, that you are one person. How many doctors do you have? Yeah, we have doctors for our parts. We very rarely have doctors for one whole thing. So it's important that you take care of that one whole thing for you. And that you do exercise programs here, get together. There are phenomenal exercise videos online now. Fitnessblender.com is probably one of the best video series I've ever seen, and I do it every day, and I don't have to go anywhere. So things like that are managing your health and your activity. They say if you are 85 The average 85-year-old moves for 45 minutes a day. And the more that you sit, that takes 3 years off your life. So there was a great article a while ago that said sitting is the new smoking because it's addictive and unhealthy. It was in the US News. It was a great tagline. And if you think about it, the TV's a big sucker, the computer is a big sucker, and when you're not used to that structure, you're more prone to just sitting around and doing that. So be active, get up. Don't necessarily get a dog so that you walk around, but spend some time with that. How many of you exercise? Yeah, that's just awesome. When we used to start with the Council on Aging, and you guys would have exercise programs, and we would say that, and you'd hear crickets, because nobody did it. So we are actually paying attention to making sure that you're more active. So just think of that. Sitting is the new smoking. If you've sat around watching TV for a half an hour, I can guarantee when you get up and walk around, you're going to be sore. You know, they say by the time that you're 35, almost every 35-year-old has a beginning of spinal stenosis. You know, so you all just got to move. This is really funny. When we do these presentations, we'll do music sometime. So we talk about sexuality and intimacy, and we use the "let's get it on," and that's what it says here. That's in my notes. It says that. I don't have that all set up. You know, but that's also something to pay attention to and to keep into your life as you get older. And you know, meeting new people and getting out there if you're single is also something that's really important. So realizing that that is still a full part of who you are. And if you've had health issues, you know, and for men with prostate cancer, there is so many more resources out there now than there were before. Just always know to ask questions. You know, when you are younger or and you don't have those, or you have a health scare even when you are younger, it totally changes your perspective. It takes a while to get back to a certain place. And yet we all know there are people who get there and there are people who don't, never do. You know, it's just so devastating that they can never get back to that point. But you learn a lot through it. And I think, you know, something that you said, I think is really important, that in that time period, you also learn what you want for yourself. And I think that's what this time period is too, as we age. And the thing is there is no way we're going to get out of this. You know, we're all going to age. You know, they haven't figured out that we're going to live like forever. You know, so then you actually have the time to determine what you want for yourself when things happen. You start having those conversations. You start putting things in place. You know, when my father was sick, one of the best gifts that he gave to me was planning. You know, that I instantly put in place for myself. And people thought that I was crazy, that I was putting in a trust and I was doing, you know, life estate stuff and I was figuring all that stuff out. But at that point, I was a single parent. You have to figure out. So sometimes those experiences, and who here is taking care of a parent? Yeah. So, you know, the sandwich generation is going to last forever, just so you know. You know, so you're also learning what, by taking care of somebody, what you need for yourself and defining what your care needs are going to be. So you use this opportunity to keep those lists to know, hey, I don't want that happening to me. This is the care I want to have if I need help. So defining that part for yourself is important too. She's going to talk about moving, so I can go right past that. Keeping busy. We'll end with keeping busy. What do you do to keep busy?
What don't I do?
What don't you do? Perfect. Work. Yes.
Yard work.
Yard work. What else?
Travel.
Where's the next place? Where are you going?
South America.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you guys can have a conversation. Her daughter's going to Bolivia. Where else? What else do you do to keep busy?
Volunteer.
Excellent. Volunteer.
Entertain.
Entertain. Parties. Yeah, we had a dinner party. We had people over for dinner last night and broke out Scrabble. It's been such, like, we've been doing it for a while now, and we've decided we're going to do a game night once a month, once we can fit it in, you know?
Doing that.
Yeah.
The ladies had a nice game night last night at the church.
Yeah. We want to play guesters. Anybody play guesters? Yeah, no. So, you know, but doing that is fun because you can kind of shrink your social life a lot of the times too. You know, that changes. You actually have to make a conscious effort to get out there. So staying busy and keeping people in your life, you know, is really, really important. There are absolutely 100% studies that show that, you know, loneliness and depression also shorten life. And it is hard when you have people that move away. you have people that pass in your life, you have different changes, it becomes something that you need to keep on that list to make sure that you are always interacting. When you have people, you have opportunities here with people that you've never met before, and I think I heard people are new living here. That is really important to make those connections. You will live longer and happier if you keep yourself busy with people around.
So I am a downsizing specialist and a senior move manager. I help people move to the next phase of their lives. And downsizing is often kind of a dirty word in more ways than one, because I do spend a lot of time in basements and attics, I will tell you that. But what I was going to say is, what I really like to look at it is there's a lot of people that I work with that are actually downsizing to age in place. So I really kind of use it as a way to better utilize the space that you currently have, or to find a home that better utilizes your lifestyle. I got involved with this business and started it after my mom passed away. I'm part of that sandwich generation, and I had 4 young children at the time. My dad was living in southern Maine, and I was trying to help him downsize my mom's things, and I realized, this is overwhelming. I'm trying to manage my family, I'm trying to help my dad physically and emotionally, and I very quickly realized it is really, I have the best job in the world, and I think I'm good at it, and I feel like I give so much help to the people that I work with. And honestly, I will tell you, I get more back from them than they ever get from me. So it's really pretty remarkable. Okay, we're ready to go. So should I stay or should I go? And Kim was saying before she has music, I was going to sing should I stay or should I go, but I said you might not know the song and then I'll be totally embarrassed, so I'm not going to sing it. But what I was going to say is downsizing, whether you're staying at home or you're moving, it is not a dirty word. This really can be a great experience. It all depends on how you look at it. What I say to my clients is, if you look at it as a chance to revisit your life, think of the things that you're going to be going through as you downsize. Your travels, photos of your children, your family. It's really a chance to go back over all the wonderful things you've done. So much of this depends on how what your attitude is and how you look at things. I always joke that I never hire anybody to work with me unless they have a good sense of humor, because there's a lot of times you see things you want to cry. And we find that our clients, even if they're very somber when we first meet them, we have them laughing in a very short period of time because there's a lot of joy in this process. So most people are totally terrified at the idea of downsizing. And you think about it, you've lived in your home 30, 40, or 50 years. I've lived in my home 20 years, and I know how much I've accumulated. And I'm not trying to minimize what we have, because it is important to us, but really most of it is just stuff. And sometimes I remember last fall when there were all these big fires in California. Of course, they're still continuing, but people were saying when they left their homes, they left with, a couple of photos and their pet. And all of them said, really, as sad as it is, it's stuff. So if you think about it that way, really it is an accumulation of things that we've had, but the most important thing is you and your health, and that's what we're all here for. And the whole thing with downsizing is just like anything else. Think back to school when you had a huge project. Hopefully you weren't one of those procrastinators that pulled an all-nighter the night before. But it's breaking it down into manageable pieces. And that's what makes downsizing less overwhelming. So the first thing I say, and it's very similar to what Kim was talking about, having goals. What do you picture your home to be? If you're staying where you are, do you perhaps want to move a bedroom down to the first floor so it's easier access for you, more comfortable? Maybe you want to turn that formal dining room into a reading room for you, or a man cave, maybe a craft room. If you're moving, what do you think you'd like your new home to be? Would it be clean and streamlined? Would it be, you know, a more traditional look? And to go along with that, like when I moved to my mother-in-law, she said to me, she calls me Natalie, not Natalie. Natalie, what I really want, I love my grandchildren, but I know what they look like. I don't need their pictures all over my wall, but I want all my Hummels. And it was really, it was very refreshing because it was very different from what a lot of my clients want, but it really also helped me to ask those questions for future people. The other thing I was going to say about picturing your home, inevitably, if you have children or nieces and nephews, they're going to try to help you. This is all coming from a loving place, but most of the time they will try to tell you what you really want. And 2 weeks ago I was working with a family and their son came in from Seattle and he said, so I'm going to IKEA tonight, I'm going to buy my parents this, you know, great streamlined sofa, and I want a really utilitarian table for a desk, you know, with no drawers. And I said, is that what your parents want? And they were afraid to say anything because he was trying to help them. But I said, I think they probably want something a little more traditional. And I don't know, I have a desk without drawers in it. It's the stupidest thing I ever did. You know? So, you know, by picturing what you want, it helps you. And it also puts you in a position where you are knowledgeable and you take control of your life. I think a lot of times the reason why kids step in to help their parents, it's not because they want to take over your downsizing process. They think you don't know what to do. So by taking control of it, you've got the power. And then you can say to them, no, that's not really what I want to do, but what I do need your help with is this. So again, just like Kim was talking about, I really encourage people, set your goals. If you are aging in place and you want to move your bedroom downstairs, what I will say to people is, let's work on a schedule where in 1 month, you're going to have that downstairs room cleaned out. In 2 months, you're going to have your new bedroom set up downstairs. We actually map out time on the calendar. It helps you break it down, make it seem less overwhelming, and also makes you stick to a schedule. Of course, you can change the schedule, but it does make you think, oh, geez, I didn't get that done yesterday. I should do it today. And if you're moving, maybe you want to move in a year. Well, you start mapping that stuff out room by room. And what I say to people when you're downsizing, start in a spare bedroom. Because if you think about what goes in your spare bedroom, it's all that stuff that you don't know what to do with. And you really, chances are you haven't looked at it in a year, right? At least. But it's very easy to make progress quickly there. And you feel like you've accomplished a lot. And most of the stuff is easy to let go of. So what that does is it just gives you momentum to move on to the next room.
I can't see, sorry.
So, okay, this is a little extreme, but you see the couple bickering and then you see them jumping up and down. So one thing that I have really learned is that usually by the time that somebody calls me in to help them with a project, there's also already been a lot of bickering between couples or between children and their parents. It's inevitable. It happens to all of us. But by talking about your goals, by having talking about what you want and what he wants or she wants, or you are able to pull together a little bit better and have a better connection. When we go in and work with somebody, we will have one person work with the husband and one person work with the wife. Everybody should have their own space that they can downsize without somebody interfering. Like, for example, I don't mean to be stereotypical, but say, for example, we won't be stereotypical. Say the man is the cook in the house. Let him do the kitchen. Let him do the downsizing. Let the wife do the office. Pick your spots. And yeah, there'll be things that come up and questions that you have, but you'll find there'll be less recriminations if you have your own area and, you're not bickering so much. So how do you choose what to keep? I kind of use 5 different criteria. I hope you can see it. That white is awfully light. But what I say is, does it make you happy? And I guess, your ice cream scoop might not make you happy, but it's pretty functional. And I guess it's happiness in the end when you eat the ice cream, right? And does it make you happy? It could be a piece of artwork that you have on your wall that you've had for 20 years that's a drawing of your first house versus a piece that you bought at Home Goods that really doesn't have a lot of meaning for you, right? Secondly, does it serve a purpose in your current life? Maybe you had a pool table, your children used it, and you really thought your grandchildren were going to use it, but they don't. So it's time to let go of something like that. Have you worn it or used it in the past 18 months? The other day I was in my garage and I saw sleds. My youngest are 18. They're really not sledding that much anymore. So those are the types of things it's okay to say goodbye to. Could you borrow, rent, or otherwise improvise? A lobster pot, a folding table, things like that. This is the big one. I call it the Catholic guilt. But do you feel guilty letting it go? We're going to talk a little bit about some of those really special things that are hard to let go of. But I guess if you can't give yourself permission to let go of things at this point in your life, when are you? And when I do a longer presentation, it gives me a little more time to talk more specifics. But I have people that have storage rooms full of things that were given to them from their grandparents that they haven't. In one case, a woman that I'm still working with, she's had a storage unit for 10 years and she spent over $20,000 storing things that she felt guilty getting rid of, when these beautiful quilts could have been on display at the Lowell Quilt Museum, or they could have been sold and she could have put a bench outside the library with her mom's name on it. That would have been more memorable for her to look at than these boxes that were not opened. Downsizing 101. I have to do this fairly quickly so I keep it rolling, but I usually recommend 2-hour increments when you're downsizing. 2 hours doesn't sound like a lot of time. It's enough time to have you make a dent without you being exhausted and not wanting to go back and do it again. So there's lots of ways of doing it, and again, I could go on forever, but and this is not in order of how things should go, because hopefully keep is not the biggest thing that you have in your classification, but there's a keep pile, donate, gift, sell, or trash and recycle. Ohio. I wasn't born there. There's no significance to the state, but I use it as an acronym whenever possible. Only handle it once. It's just like, do you remember like the old thing, like when you were in an office and you kind of tried to live with that motto, or when you bring your mail in, you're better if you just handle it, disperse it. If you are going over and over things in your closet or your cabinets, you're wasting so much time. It's not easy. That's what you're going to say to me. It's so easy for you to do it, But it's a situation where if you really can't decide, take those things, put them in a box, and put it on your calendar and go back in 30 days and see if you really feel the same way. 90% of the people that I work with, after we've been downsizing for a little bit, in the beginning they're like, I cannot let that go. And then after 30 days, they're like, oh, for God's sakes, get that thing out of here. So that may or may not happen to you, and you may open that box and say, hey, I want to keep this. But it really does help not to keep going back over things as much as possible. Fun ideas for downsizing. Yes, again, downsizing can be fun. I'm going to keep saying that. Take a picture of treasured items that it's hard for you to let go of. The quilts that my client had in her in her storage unit. We've taken really nice pictures of them. I also talked her into taking one out and putting it on her bed so she actually could look at that beautiful quilt every day. But taking pictures of your kids' artwork that you don't have room for, maybe the mother of the bride dress that you're never going to wear again. You know, those are things you can take pictures of to remember and then pass them on. Use your china instead of those cracked, chipped, everyday dishes that you are using. And I'm only speaking for myself here. But I can't tell you how many of my clients use their china every day now. Is it a little more work? This much, because you have to use a Pyrex to microwave. You can put it in the dishwasher. You just don't want to touch them when they're hot because you'll fade the little gold edges. But it is a great way to treat yourself, and why not? You know, what are you going to do with it? You're going to sell it and get maybe $25 for that beautiful set of china, and your kids don't want it. We're going to talk about that. Use that Tiffany Sterling bowl that you have to put your cotton balls in. Use your Waterford candy dish to put your paper clips in instead of that plastic piece that you got at Staples, right? When I work with my clients, I do a floor plan, even if they're staying in their own home. Lots of times people say if they're going to downsize, they want to buy some new furniture, or again, they're going to change their room. I use a magnetic planning board so we can move things around. You may want to do it on a piece of graph paper. It doesn't have to be crazy fancy, but when you do a floor plan, it helps you think about other pieces that you might be able to use in your house. For example, if you're going from a 4-bedroom home to a 2-bedroom apartment, you might have a beautiful dresser in one of those rooms that you could then move to the front door, and then you have something to put a mail bowl on. You can put your gloves, your umbrella right in that drawer. It's a great way to repurpose. Using your china cabinet without the top part of the hutch can be a beautiful place to store your office supplies. A lot of times when we downsize, we don't have room for an office anymore, so your dining room with a small table becomes your desk, and your hutch can be where you store all your office supplies. So I said this to Barbara earlier. I don't have to say anything more than show you that slide. It is really the truth. And I have only met one other person, and it was during a presentation, and she raised her hand. She said, I wish I'd saved more stuff. And I was like, darn it. But no, this is really true. Inevitably, no matter how much downsizing, we always get to a place, and my clients will say, why did I save all this stuff? Because it means something to you. But anyway, that's a very truism of downsizing. So this is, I don't know if you can all see it, it's a picture of a mom with her daughter in a room full of stuff, and she's saying, just think, one day all of this is going to be yours. One of my favorite clients ever, we were going through her china cabinet, and I said, Kathy, what are we going to do with this second set of china? She uses her china every day, and she said, well, my daughter is going to take it. And I said, does your daughter want it? And she goes, she doesn't know it yet, but she does. Don't pass on your things to somebody else if they don't want them. It's not fair. It just creates a cycle for them that then they have to move on it. And again, I can talk to you a little bit more about ways that you can kind of get rid of some of the things. I hate to use that word, get that phrase, get rid of, but that really is a good message for you. Be gracious when you are offering things. If they say no, it's nice to let it go. And then the 2 certainties of downsizing. It will always take you longer than you think. So by giving yourself a lot of time to do it, if you know you want to move, if you're thinking about it, maybe you're not even thinking about it. Spend, every time you go to the swap shop, take something to the swap shop, because he's going to be waiting there for you. And then she's going to be waiting to pick it up, right?
You know,
So But if you think about it and really plan it out, you're going to be so happy. Not only are you going to be happy and you're going to be prepared.
Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia Kuppens. I am a certified financial planner and I am with a firm in Boston, O'Brien Wealth Management. But I live down here on the South Shore. I've been in Cohasset for 33, 34 years, raised my children on the South Shore, and my husband and I love it down here, and we spend a lot of time back and forth to Hingham and Cohasset. Dawn is an old friend, and that's why I'm here. So it was really helpful for Kim to ask, where is everybody in their retirement journey, their transition? And it seemed like it was kind of a third, a third, a third. Some people are planning for retirement. Some people are just in it. Some people have been in it for a while. So I don't know that everything that I'm going to talk about is going to be particularly important to each one of you, but I think even those of you who are in retirement, you're going to have something to add for all the folks who are just getting there and planning for it. So every topic that I have up here, let me just, here's what I thought we would cover today. And I could talk for an hour or two on every topic, but instead I'm just going to talk for about 5 minutes on each. So I thought we'd talk about when you're getting ready for retirement, what do you need to do? Making a budget, how do you invest while you're planning for retirement and while you're in retirement, and estate planning, why it's important for every single person in this room. And then talk a bit about Social Security benefits. A lot of people find that the most confusing topic as they're going into retirement, that alongside with Medicare. So we're going to talk about Medicare too. And then we're going to talk about long-term care. How do we pay for care should we need it at the later end of our lives? So again, I'm going to just touch the surface on each one of these, but if you have questions, I want you to jump in and I'll try to answer them. If it requires a longer discussion, I might say, hey, let's huddle at the end of the session and we can talk about it, and I'm glad to do that. So let's start talking about budgeting. For those of you who have already retired, when you first got into retirement, did you spend less than you did before you retired? You spent less. Did you set a budget? Okay, good, that's great. Here's what we find. Some people say about retiring, there are 3 phases. And I don't mean to be funny, but this is what people say. Go, slow, and no. Meaning when you're beginning your retirement, it's go, 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 go. We're going to travel. We're going to jump out of planes. We're going to go see all of the national parks and do all those things that we've been waiting to do. And go see the kids if the kids are living far away. So for a lot of people, those early years of retirement are just as costly as their working years. And then in the middle stages of retirement, you're not traveling as much. You're not doing as many things. You know, maybe you were going to Florida for a month in the winter, and now you don't really feel like doing that. You're staying home a bit more. And then again, as you said, Kim said, none of us are going to escape it. We're all going to get older. We're all going to age. And those later years sometimes are slower years. So that's why they call it go, slow, and no. And what happens is in the later years, the money that you've been spending on traveling and having a lot of fun in the early years, you're spending more on health care and home care, that type of thing. So it's really important to, as Kim was talking about, to envision how you want to live in retirement and think about the things that you want to do and what they're going to cost you. And so basically it's making a budget. It's just some people are great at making budgets. I work with clients all the time who are planning for retirement, and I'll say to them, so how much do you spend a year? And some of them whip out a spreadsheet or a little notepad and say, well, I spend this in October, November, December, and I have a little more at Christmas, and and then I go away and I have a vacation and I've got a budget for everything. Man I was talking to yesterday said, I have no idea. I have no idea how much I spend. There's a happy medium. You have to have an idea. And so I think that, and I'm talking about the financial aspects of retirement. So I think for a happy retirement, you don't want to be stressed. You don't want to be stressed about money. And so you need to figure out how much you spend, how much you need to spend, and what all those categories are, and keep track of it. If you're planning for retirement, keep track of it for a couple of years before so that you have a good idea. And if you need to, don't put your head in the sand, cut back a little bit. Some people say, you know, I went out to eat twice a week, every week. And I don't need to do that anymore in retirement because I'm not as tired at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock when I get home. So there are ways to economize, and we all know how to do it, and we all know what we should be doing, and sometimes you just have to take that step and get there. And that's one of the things that we do. I mean, I do a lot of work with investing and helping clients invest and helping them get good medical insurance. But one of the things I really do is to help them sit down and take a good hard look at what they're spending money on and what might be, what really gives them pleasure and what might just be a little bit too much. So I just wanted to stress that. Did anyone find that when they got in retirement, they cut out some things that they had been doing?
Yeah, shoveling snow.
Good for you. What was the second one?
Mowing the lawn.
Mowing the lawn. So you actually upped your expenses, but you knew you could do
I
it.
was paying for it before, too.
Oh, okay. Another thing that's up on this screen is get help with paying bills if you need it. There are people who will help you pay bills if your finances get confusing for you. And sometimes we see with our clients who are aging, who may have some cognitive issues. If you have a friend who's experiencing that, suggest that they get some help so that they're not subject to scams and financial fraud. That's one of the biggest issues we see, not so much with our early retirees, but with our folks in their 80s and 90s. There are so many people who are out there after your money, and they will prey on you. They call. So IRS never calls you. Anybody who calls you asking for money, ask them to send me something. None of them will sell it. Send it.
Right.
Okay, so a lot of people say, I'm retired. How should I invest? Well, let me tell you, when you're in early retirement, you're still a long-term investor. When we work with our clients and they're retiring in their 60s, we say to them, we're going to plan for you to live to 100. Now, not everybody is going to live to 100, but I bet every one of you knows about someone who has. And lots of people are living into their 80s and 90s. So you're living for a good long life. You're going to have to plan for a good long life, hopefully a very healthy long life. And that means that, in a way, your investing is not so different from a 40-year-old's or a 50-year-old's. And what I'm saying there is you still have to plan for inflation. So when you're investing for retirement, you need to think about all of your different sources of income. So a really big source of income for a lot of people is Social Security, right? For many people, Social Security provides the bulk of their retirement income. If we think about Social Security started in 1940, the first woman, her name was Ida something, I can't remember her last name. Her Social Security check was like $22, and I think she received it for 2 years before she died. Now it's a very significant source of income. So you have to think about, how much am I getting from Social Security? Do I have a pension? More people don't have pensions now than do have pensions. You're very lucky if you have a pension. And then the rest of what you're living on are your savings, right? So you have to say, how long do those savings need to last me? And how do I invest them? Well, one of the biggest mistakes that an early retiree can make is to put it all into cash or put it all into bonds that aren't going to pay you a lot. You need to have some of it in stocks, because stocks, and I'm not even saying a huge percentage, but stocks are the best, historically, the best protectors against inflation, because we don't have a lot of inflation now. We had that, the huge financial recession, 2008, and we've had very low inflation. It's creeping back in, but all of you remember back in the 70s and the early 80s when inflation was rampant and interest rates were very high. So you want to have part of your investments that are going to keep pace with inflation. And that is, I'm not going to give you a percentage. It's different for everyone, but you need to think about that. Don't be afraid of some stock exposure, stocks and bonds. Another source of income for people sometimes is taking a portion of their assets and converting them into annuities. Now, I'm a financial planner, and I'm usually not so hot on annuities recently. And the reason is that interest rates were very low and you had to pay a lot to get a good income from your annuities. But it can be an essential part of your retirement plan to give you a fixed level of income so that you can cover all of your basic expenses. So I'm not going to say annuities are good or bad. I would suggest that you have an expert. If you're considering an annuity, there are really high fees in annuities, but there are some that are reasonable. Have an expert, an outside expert, other than the insurance agent who's trying to sell you the annuity, and have someone else take a look at it. Make sure you understand all of the fees. But never annuitize never buy an annuity to provide you with more income than you need for your daily expenses. So, because for the most part, if you buy an annuity, you can get different kinds of terms with the annuity. Sometimes they end, the income ends when you die, or if you have a spouse, when your spouse dies, or it might be what they call a life certain annuity, so that it goes on for 5 or 10 years after you die. But then it ends. So you could invest a lot of money, and if you die, some of that money is gone. You have to think about how does this fit into my overall plan? Do I want to leave money for my children, for charities, that type of thing? Estate planning is really important. Right now, and gee, lucky you if you're in this situation, you can die with $1 million and not pay any federal estate tax. So, and if you're a couple, if you have a spouse, you can each die with $11 million and not pay any federal estate tax. So for most of us, that is not going to apply, right? In Massachusetts, if you have $1 million when you die, that includes your house. It includes the value of everything you own. You're going to pay Massachusetts estate tax. And so there are some things that you can do to shield a little bit up to $1 million from estate tax by putting it into a trust if you're married. If you're single, you can die with $900,000 in your name and not pay any Massachusetts estate tax. So for a lot of people, estate planning isn't a financial issue anymore. But if you have more than $1 million in your estate, meaning your house, you are going to want to do some estate planning. But it's important for other reasons, because if you die without a will, you don't get to determine how your assets are distributed after your death. So you want to have a will, you may want to have a trust, but you also want to do some estate planning that's going to affect how you're treated during your life. So estate planning includes things like having a healthcare proxy. If you can't make healthcare decisions for yourself, who do you want to make those healthcare decisions? It can include a living will, meaning if you're at the point where you're very ill, and do you want to have a do not resuscitate? Do you want to be kept alive through artificial means for long term? You can specify how you want to be treated, and you can specify that in great detail. And the other thing, durable power of attorney. If you become older and perhaps you're not of sound mind, you want someone you trust to be able to handle all of your needs, all of your expenses, pay your bills, make decisions for you. My mother is, I was listening to Natalie, my mom has vascular dementia, and I had to downsize, and she lives in a nice assisted living apartment. She's really happy there, but I have to handle all of her decisions. I know, Dawn, you had to do all of that for your mother. And my parents were smart. They designated someone they trusted. It happened to be me. But if they didn't have children, or if they hadn't said, they wouldn't have necessarily had the best care. So you want to name someone you really, really trust. And then the other thing is proper beneficiary designations. How many of you have IRAs or 401k plans? Make sure every once in a while you are checking who is going to receive those assets when you pass. I can't tell you how many times we get a new client and we say, let's look at your IRAs, and the beneficiary is a niece or nephew that they're no longer talking to, or they've been divorced and it's their ex-wife and they want to leave it to their current wife. Or it really depends on your life. So you want to make sure that your money is going where you want it to go. How many are collecting Social Security? How many are still planning for it? Anybody? Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, except that if you're already collecting, you've made your decisions. If you are thinking about when to collect, I'm going to boil it down because I have just a few minutes. The longer you wait, the more you get. And you should make sure that you're collecting before age 70, because at 70 it doesn't go up anymore. Okay? And is anyone taking spousal Social Security? Okay, all right. I'm going to skip over this because sounds like this is taken care of for everyone. So for Medicare, people are eligible, for most people, eligible for Medicare at age 65. Does everyone feel like they understand Medicare and all of the pieces of Medicare? Yes? I'm seeing yeses and nos. All right, so I'm going to just give you the very, very basics, and I'm here to answer questions if you need it. There are different parts of Medicare. Part A is free. The government gives it to you. It's your hospitalization, inpatient. Part B is your physicians, your doctor's visits. You pay for Part B. Starts at I think $134 per person per month. If you're receiving Social Security, it's deducted from your Social Security. All right? It does not cover, A and B does not cover all of your medical expenses. If you're over 65 and you're still working, you don't have to take Part B and pay for it if you still have coverage through your employer. And here's where most people get confused. They say, I don't understand. What's D? What's Medicare supplement? There's two ways to take Medicare. One is what I call the add-on. You've got original parts A and B. And then you can add on a supplement. That's called a Medicap plan. That covers everything that A and B don't cover, plus a Part D prescription drug plan. So then you have to make two buying decisions. You're picking your supplement, you're picking your Part D, and you can change that every year. The other is what we call a bundled approach. You say, I don't want to make all those decisions, and I just want to pick a Part C plan. That's called a Medicare Advantage plan. And all of the insurance companies, Blue Cross, Tufts, all of them around here offer them. Think of it more like an HMO. This is a build your own, and this is like an HMO where it's all in one and you're paying this company, this plan, to handle everything for you. These kinds of plans are good. You want to make sure that they can be less expensive. They can be. You want to make sure that the doctors that you want to see and the hospitals that you want to go to are covered by that plan. It's like an HMO. They're going to cover certain networks. These plans, the supplements, often have more flexibility, and but they can be more expensive. So it's a mix and match, but you pick what makes the best sense for you. Blue Cross, Tufts, those are the ones that I see most people pick. Harvard, thank you. Go on their websites and you can find out a lot about their plans. The Medicare, Social Security, Medicare.gov, that's the website. They have wonderful resources there. If you pick the add-on approach and you have to pick a prescription drug plan, you want to make sure that the drugs that you take are covered by that plan. And you can go to Medicare.gov online, put in your drugs that you take and how much you take. You just have all your pills there, right there, and whatever you take. And they'll tell you which plans cover your prescriptions and what the cost is going to be to you. It's really a wonderful resource. The other resource that you can use is, I saw a brochure for Shine, and they're great. They'll help you. The very last thing that I wanted to talk about is planning for long-term care. And by long-term care planning, I don't mean necessarily insurance. All I want to say is that I'd like each and every one of you to think about, if I need long-term care, and by that I mean someone to come into my home to help me. If my mind should not be clear and I can't live on my own, what do I want? Where do I want to go? Do I want someone to come and help me? Do I want to go somewhere to be helped? And how am I going to pay for that? There is no one right answer. Everybody has their own preferences and their own needs, and everybody has different resources. So for some people who don't have a lot of resources, you may depend on Medicaid toward the end of your life, should you need it. I hope none of you need it. Others might say, how am I going to pay for this? My income only goes so far. If you have a home, sometimes people say, my home is my source of funds for long-term care if I need it. Maybe I want to stay in my home and I have a home equity line of credit so that I can borrow, or I take a reverse mortgage. I don't typically recommend reverse mortgages, but they are a resource. Or should I buy insurance for long-term care?
Expensive.
It's very expensive, but there are new kinds of insurance, and I just want you to be aware of them. They're called hybrid plans, where they're a combination of life insurance and long-term care insurance. And that's all I'm going to say, because it is such a detailed and complicated subject, but I want everybody to think about, if I can't take care of myself, where do I want to be, and how do I want to be taken care of, and who's going to pay for that? And make a plan. That's all. And that's it.